If it looks like I just woke up, that's because I did. And if it looks like my wig isn't properly glued down, that's because it's not. I only glued down the half that's visible. I've wanted to cosplay Ashe for a while, but I just never really wanted to put in the time into making her. It wasn't going to be a competition piece or anything. Just wanted to cosplay Ashe because I think she's pretty hot and cool and really badass. I just really like Ashe. When I went to Spirit Halloween, once they opened next to the Joann's that I go to, they actually had the Ashe official Overwatch costume or whatever, and it was already on the 50% off sale that Spirit Halloween usually does at the end of the season, and so I bought it because why wouldn't I? Here is the costume. I'm going to go ahead and try it on. I took out the hat because it's kind of like bent, so I'm gonna have to iron the hat out a little bit eventually. I'm also going to have to take out my braids, which is the plan anyways. Okay. Oh, this is actually pretty nice. It's a dicky with tie. And then here's this is the shoulder pad, I'm guessing, and the wrist gauntlet, which I'm going to be replacing, but I am going to be using this elastic from and velcro because those are valuable resources right now. Okay, I actually really like this idea. When you wear things to conventions like all day, it can get a little bit hot, and so I like the idea of not having to wear a ton of layers. You know, I don't hate this. Kind of like the way that it looks. I really like this idea here. I cut out well, I didn't cut out, but I used my seam ripper and I opened up all of the seams, especially where these are. That's going to be important. And then I took these little pieces. These are all the Velcro pieces. Oh, one's missing. Must have fallen. I'll find it later. I took and saved all the Velcro pieces, even this one that connects to the shoulder, because I'm going to repurpose them for the foam. After I seam ripped all of the fabric armor, I just traced the patterns onto some craft paper that I had. Well, it's not really craft paper, it's just bags from all the takeout that I eat. I have a ton of paper bags because I eat takeout way too often. After that, I just took some white chalk and I drew over all of the little lines and details that I knew I wanted to be on my pattern. And basically, I just pressed down really hard onto the paper so that it would transfer over, and then I took a pen and drew over all the lines of the details so that I could see them better whenever it was time for me to transfer it onto my own foam work. And then I took a Sharpie or a pen and I added some creative liberties here. I just kind of drew on some more details that I thought would look nice, but more or less it's pretty much exactly the same as the pattern that there was before. And I transferred that onto 6mm EVA foam to transfer all the little details onto the EVA foam. Because I couldn't use white chalk because the foam is white, I just took a mechanical pencil and drew over all those lines and then rubbed it down, and that's how it would transfer over. I learned that in the 7th grade. I cannot remember my 7th grade art teacher's name, but thank you, Miss. I just cut out the foam using a box cutter. Lots of cosplayers use craft knives, but I haven't been able to find one, nor do I care. And it's also really cheap to get a box cutter and blades for it. However, you can also just sharpen your blades with sandpaper. You should always try and keep your blades nice and sharp because when cutting foam, it can start to become kind of jagged if you've got a dull blade. Then to cut out the details, I took my blade and I would cut at a 45-degree angle and pull them out. If I needed to cut something all the way through, obviously I would just cut it all the way through. And I cut out those big pieces, that 5-sided shape, which I don't know the name of at the time. I cut that out and then I would place it under the foam. And then I placed a piece of 4mm EVA foam on top of it, so it gave it a little bit of depth. And I did that for all of these, those are all 5-sided shapes. Now that's technically like a long hexagon, right? Okay, so I did that for all of these little shapes that I wanted to kind of have a little bit of depth and more shadow to. I cut them out and then put them under the rest of the foam so that it looked like good. To glue on all these pieces, I'm using contact cement. For contact cement, you apply it to both sides and you let it dry and then you stick them together. Contact cement, however, is toxic. If you're a beginner, feel free to use hot glue, or if you want to take a hand at contact cement, just make sure you have a respirator. To make the armor for like her hands and knees, I covered my hand in plastic wrap and then duct tape, but it's hard to record that with my hand, so I'll show you better on my leg. Like I said, just covered it in plastic wrap and then duct tape, and then all I did was take a Sharpie. I have some metallic Sharpies, but you can use a regular black one and draw on the pattern that you want onto the knee and cut that out, and I transferred those patterns onto paper and then again onto foam just like previously. For the knees, I still use 6mm EVA foam, but for the hands, I use 4mm EVA foam, except for these little, they're not really triangles. I don't really know what I don't know my shapes if you guys can't tell. I use 6mm EVA foam for that and then cut them down the middle and glue them together so they look like they were popping out, and Dremeled the sides so that they were a little bit smoother. You don't have to do any of that. That's just what I did for a little bit more detail. And then I cut out these little hexagons for the knuckle bits, I guess, on her armor and glued those on using contact cement as well. And then I just took my heat gun, which you can't see here because of the way where my heat gun is, I can't record it. And I took my heat gun and I would heat up these hand pieces and kind of form them around my hand. And it's hot, so don't do that. Don't do that. It's nighttime now, so the lighting is going to kind of suck. But I finished all the armor, so we have the 2 knee pieces. We've got the two hand little guards here. We've got the wrist and the 1 shoulder blade. And so next what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix like half, we'll say like not quite a cup, but we'll do like a 1 to like a half ratio. There's already some water in here, just a little bit, can't really see it. So there's a little bit of water and some white glue, and then I'm going to mix it together. I'm going to put on like 3 to 5 layers of that so that it will be the primer, and then we will paint it probably in the morning. So, like I said, all I did was add some white glue to that water and mix it together and put on several layers of that as the primer. You can use Mod Podge as a primer. You can use Plasti Dip as a primer, which is normally what I would use for foam pieces, but I felt like this was much simpler since they're smaller pieces. And then I just took some gray paint and I painted all of them with that. And then I took this gilding wax, which is silver. And as you can see, once you add the wax on, it starts to look a lot more metallic, more like armor and less like, I don't know, a cartoon. And a little bit of this wax goes a long way. So I would just put a tiny bit on and then use a sponge to sort of spread it out. And I pretty much barely made a dent into the wax. Like, I've built swords with this, I've built other armor with this, and I have not been able to get rid of it yet. It lasts for a long time. Then I took a smaller brush and added in all the tiny little details. It has a lot of little stringies on it right now. Why won't it focus? If I zoom out, it's going to focus on my toes. I don't want that. But I have these foam dowels that I used for the like horns on my Shenron. I'm going to use these to make the dynamite. Oh, Damaris, she's so smart. Make the dynamite. I sure did. I cut out these pieces. I cut them 9 inches long, and then I cut them in half because Ashe's dynamite actually has a piece, like, it looks like it's separating the dynamite, but it's like future dynamite, I guess. So it looks cool. And I added a strip in the middle, a strip circle, to make that separation piece. And I added some 2mm EVA foam to cover that with. Then I cut out the details, also using 4mm EVA foam and some 2mm EVA foam for the smaller details. And to put those on, I used some super glue. Super glue is really nice for small, tiny details, and it's less messy than the contact cement. So I'd really recommend at the very least, oh, I'm looking at memes, I guess. That's fine, Damaris. Don't work. Like, just keep recording. That's absolutely fine. After everything was painted, I primed it with some Mod Podge acrylic sealer. It was raining that day. And now for the piece of resistance. I am going to take some black acrylic paint and water it down and put that onto the armor. And then I take a damp paper towel and I wipe away the excess using that, and it gets pretty much the black into all those crevices so it looks more realistic and has some depth, and also adds some weathering to it. So, you know, it makes it look like actual armor and not like the toy that it is, which is really cool, even though it doesn't really look like actual armor in the camera, I'm going to be honest. Finally, for the armor, I added on all the velcro, and I just use hot glue for that because hot glue is super simple to use. Oh, it just slid. I just added hot glue for that and let it sit for a little bit, and then all those attachments were done. You may know that Ashe is very cool and has tattoos, and I'm not very cool and I don't have any tattoos. But all I did was find some references for her tattoos online and put them into Photoshop. I just took like random pictures of roses and stuff and the Deadlock Gang or the Deadlock Rebels logo and put them into Photoshop, and then I mirrored them. Time to look pretty! I'm not entirely sure how to put on makeup, but I do know how to use Photoshop, which is way more valuable skill these days. So I have this wig from my Snow White cosplay. I just did her with white hair. And I didn't know how to flat iron the back because I never have to flat iron my own hair. So I thought long and hard and I said, what would Beyonce do?
I got it. Turn the wigs around. What?
So yeah, once I remembered that it was a wig, I just turned it around and I flat ironed it. And you know, Beyonce has not let me down once. She has definitely given nothing but absolute banger advice for my entire existence. And I flat ironed the back. It wasn't as flat as Ashe's hair, but who cares? This is a Spirit Halloween costume. And then I added on those temporary tattoos. I'm half dressed up. Don't laugh at me, please. And here's how it turned out. And some Ashe gameplay.
Yo, this shit OP.